let's get into the books. Into the books. And at the bottom of the books is It Came from the Multiplex. Now, this is a series of short stories, and I just think it's kind of like an unbalanced short story collection. It is, some of them are really good. There actually are some pretty good stories in this. There are also a lot of pretty bad ones, and ones that I just did not like that much. So that got it at the bottom, and it's one of those where it'd be like, I would be very picky and choosy as to which stories you read from this one. Some of them are just pretty bad, but that's like when you're reviewing short story collections, that's kind of like, for me, that's how I rank them. Really, it's like, is this balanced? Does this work as a whole package, or are there a few stories that you like and everything else is kind of eh? And what's funny is the next book on that same wavelength that I read was Damocles, which is a Warhammer book, which is a series of 4 novellas about a very specific battle. And one of those novellas was outstanding, and the other 3 were fine. And that is, again, it's when you're reviewing novella collections and short story collections, if it's unbalanced, it's not a good collection. So Damocles is the one that's like next up on that list. It's just because it was just a very unbalanced set of novellas with some interesting ideas, but only one of them were really something that I will remember and go back to again and again and again. Next up, another Warhammer 40k a little graphic novel I read was Sisters of Battle. I'm amazed. Apparently, Marvel had the license to Warhammer at one point, and relatively recently, like they might still have the license. I just had no idea because this came out in 2022. This is really just a bunch of nuns with guns show up to stop like a insurrection of a manufacturing area. So, if you like nuns with guns fighting demons, you'll have a good time. I just don't think, for me, I don't think what I really like about the Warhammer universe is best served by comics. As this does seem to be kind of the trend in that I don't really love what comics bring to the universe. Another Warhammer book, I swear, there's not too many of those. I have more interesting stuff coming out soon. But this is Lionel Johnson, Lord of the First. This is a novella. I had a good time with it. I listened to this on audio. It was on sale. Like, there was a sale going on, so I bought it on a specific audiobook service that I found out doesn't allow you to go for 1.25 speeds or 1.5 speeds. So it was very odd to do just 1 time speed. I was like, oh, I haven't done this in a while. This feels weird. But that aside, I had a good time with this. I thought this was a fun little novella. It is another, I mean, you can see a pattern in a lot of these, is that this is kind of, again, a little bit of an unbalanced story, where I think it starts really interesting, because basically, like, they go to this planet, and there is an alien that's infecting this planet, and basically kind of like creating a bunch of people into like zombies. And it starts where you kind of like going through like how this is affecting all the human crew members, and how all of these different regiments and stuff are getting turned and altered and everything like that. And because of that, the really interesting normal humans that you're following at the start of that story are no longer really a part of the story because they get zombified, which is not as fun for me, because like, in Warhammer, there's like these like genetically altered super space marines who like do a lot of things, and like I'm more interested in the human aspects of living beside these monstrous humans who like can kill anyone at the blink of an eye. Like, it's just like a terrifying idea to live through the universe from the human perspective. So once you kind of lost the human perspective, it wasn't as fun. Lionel Johnson was at least interesting. He's like one of the Primarchs, which is like these special generals who's big and strong. He's a bad person, so I was like, oh, well, that's fun at least. Next up is Aliens, Earth Hive, and like I'm saying again and again, it was just a little bit unbalanced. This is a sci-fi book that is adapting a aliens comic book from the 80s. This came out in 1992. Now, when that comic was released, that comic was originally about it was a sequel to Aliens, and it was made before Alien 3. So that comic book starred Hicks and Newt, who, if you've seen Alien 3, they no longer with us. So they eventually, Alien 3 came out, so Dark Horse republished those comics, but they changed the characters' names, and it is sloppy as hell if you go back and read those and you don't realize that was originally Hicks and Newt. There was no good reason why they did that back in the day, because when you read it, you're like, this is obviously this, and you change the names for no reason. It's just in order to try and make it fit, and it's very sloppy. So this is a novel adapting the comic series after the change has been made. So what's interesting about this novel is that it effectively makes those two characters different characters and have like a little bit of a slightly different backstory. So it's just not obviously Hicks and Newt. You can see it like, okay, this is Billy and Wilkes. That's it. Like, of all names to change it to, you chose Billy and Wilkes? God, Dark Horse, what were you doing? But so that was interesting from a character perspective. I just don't like a lot of the world building in this is like very early 90s sci-fi, and is kind of the world building in science fiction books that I don't love as much, where it's just like, and we got the new Bucks, and it's just like every 5 minutes is a new dumb sci-fi term, and it's just like always like, I'm like, guys, this is supposed to be just like a parody of capitalism, but like, you know, you can tell dark stories within the capitalism exploded into the nth degree. Like, that's what's fun about Alien. It's the Alien universe, especially the modern Alien universe, is a very relatable universe. It just happens to take place in space. When they're talking about like miners and people who are like in the working class, you're like, if you're a person who grew up in the working class, you can read that and be like, wow, I'm relating to this. It's clearly about our currently time. And like Aliens Earth Hive just had a bunch of really dumb, not very interesting sci-fi world building ham-fistedness at the beginning, which was just bleh. But when they finally get off world and are like fighting the aliens, it was fun. It was fun when they're like fighting the aliens. So when the plot kicks in, it is not super terrible. It's just, I just didn't find it as interesting as modern Alien stories. Next up, I read Chainsaw Man Volume 4. Chainsaw Man, still great. They're still great. And this one actually had some really interesting character beats in it, so still enjoying the series. Next up is Whirlwind by Charles L. Grant, which is Charles L. Grant's second X-Files book. I actually thought that this was better than Goblins, and I enjoyed Goblins quite a bit. This one just felt a little bit more focused and wasn't trying to do too much. I felt that Goblins kind of tried to do everything, because it tried to do like a Monster of the Week story, but it also tried to do like a mythology story and the same thing. And for me, with X-Files, I always love me my Monster of the Week X-Files episodes. And this felt like a really good, Monster of the Week episode with some pretty interesting characters and a pretty interesting setting that they wouldn't have been able to go to on the budget of the TV show at this time. Because it's desert-based and is really kind of interesting. Yeah, so I really liked Whirlwind, and it had a very interesting villain. And Mulder and Scully really felt like the characters that I know them to be. Next up, the Animal Attacks book, Vespas, which is a book about bats. And at first I was like, oh, it's about like normal bats. But then you figure out, oh, there's a giant bat. So that's not a big spoiler, but like it's gonna be the selling point that's gonna get you into this book, because you'll be like, bats, giant bats. So I'm like, hell yeah. So a bunch of giant bats effing up New York City. And it is rad. There's some awesome animal attack sequences in this. There is an amazing... Thanks, Loomis. There is an amazing finale in this that takes place in the Statue of Liberty. They're fighting giant bats in the Statue of Liberty. Yas, queen! I loved it. It was very fun. Jeff Roven is a pretty great writer. The only thing that I didn't love about this book is that, like, there's a little propaganda in here. It's a little too kind to the cops. And, I'm not for that life. So that was my only thing that was kind of like iffy about. But everything else, like, I did quite like. And I thought that the characters in this were surprisingly three-dimensional. So a pretty big surprise from a book that just has a big old bat on the cover. I'm like, oh, that's fun. Next up, a Warhammer book. I know, I read too many of these, but I swear there will be more. But this is The First Heretic by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, and this is part of the Horus Heresy series, which is a series that I accidentally got into in December, and it has taken over my freaking life. Still great. This is really good. This has some amazing human perspectives in that. And also has, like, some awesome demons. Like, demons show up, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy's like, we're gonna fight you, demons. And then demons, like, the other guys are like, actually, I think we're cool with the demons. I'm gonna team up with them. And you're like, damn. And then there's demon fights. It's very cool. One of the characters you follow, you follow from him being like a normal-ish person. He's still one of the big old spacey marinies, but he slowly becomes a demon throughout the book, and it is fun. So fun. Aaron Dembski-Bowden is one of the better writers in Black Library, which is the people who write Warhammer books. So yeah, First Heretic is really good. Has some really strong writing and some great character moments in this. Like, so if you're at all into the world, and if you are into the Horus Heresy at all, like, if you read those first 3 books, which are the ones that's most easily available, I would definitely say, you should read The First Heretic. It's quite good. Next up is a little sci-fi novella. I've discovered I really do quite enjoy some sci-fi novellas. I think it's just like an untapped marketplace for me. And this is Hard Reboot by Django Wexler. And this is just like a story which has like this awesome like lesbian romance at the center. And it's like there is this old Earth has become a place where people fight robots. There's robot fights. And the reason why Earth is basically abandoned except for all the robot fighting is because all of the technology got like destroyed by spyware. So everything has to be like direct connection, because if you try to like connect to the internet or do anything like this, you just get like ads, and it just destroys whatever thing you're using. So it's like a sci-fi world where they can't use Earth because Earth got ruined by too many ads, and it's just like kind of like a very funny idea, and I really enjoyed it. And also there was some rad robot fights, and I really liked the central relationship at the center of this book. This is like a quick little novella, but I was like, oh, my heart, it's so sweet. I'm like, good for them. I'm glad. Next up is a series of Warhammer books I read. So this is a trilogy that was on sale, and I bought it, and boy, am I glad I did. This is the last bit of Warhammer books we're going to talk about, so forgiveth me. But this is the Vaults of Terror series. There's a trilogy of 1, 2, and 3. I accidentally bought the third one a while ago, not realizing it was the third one. So then I was like, oh no. But then somehow in a miracle, like the other 2 went on sale. But they went on sale on audiobooks, and then I listened and I was like, wow, I really like the audiobooks for this. And then I also bought the third one audiobook. He is really, really good at capturing the human elements of this inhumane world. And this is like a hard-boiled detective story in a way, but it also really explores the degradation of society from this horrible fascist government. And this is a hard-boiled detective story that is recognizing that ACAB is a thing. It recognizes that the forms of policing in an unjust society, while it might produce interesting characters to read about, they're not good. These people are not good. The guys who are solving the detective agencies, you might be interested in what they're doing. They ain't good people. The cops is bad. And this book realizes that and can still tell you a nice, cool detective story, but without being like, but the police being misunderstood. And I'm like, nah, bitch. I hate them. Hate them all. So yeah, so this was very nice to read from that perspective, because there would be like these great moments where you're like, oh, we learned a little bit more about this character and their past. Wow. But then you'd be like, oh, he just did a very bad thing. Oh, he a bad person. He's compelling to read about. I'm interested in his journey, but he a bad person. Also, there's a floating skull. They have like a little floating skull robot, and it goes Heretic. Gorgias. His name is Gorgias, and the way that the audiobook narrator like voiced him, I was like, I love this character. He's just like rapido, rapido, and he's like says all these like little things. I'm like, oh, I love you, little floating skull robot. Oh, you're my best friend. Yeah, so this is the trilogy is the Carrion Throne, the Hollow Mountain, and it ends with the Dark City. And I thought they were all great. Had some awesome action. The two books like take place during this like huge riot of the city, and it's like amazing. It's all good. I loved it. Next up is one that I really liked, and that is Hellhound by Glenn Greenhall. I would not even the cover of this book makes it look like it's kind of my Animal Attack books, and like I've seen people say it's an Animal Attack books. I don't really think this is like an Animal Attack books. I mean, the animal does attack once in a while, but mostly it's just a book about like, wow, this world is sad, and I'm sad. It's just basically sad. It makes you look at your kitties and be like, what are you planning? Like, is Loomis gonna like push me down the stairs so that he can go live with my neighbors who Loomis thinks are cooler than me? And it's like, Loomis, you can't kickflip. Just because they can doesn't mean when you live with them, you're going to be able to skateboard. Dude, be happy. Anyways, this is a very dark tale that will very much ruin your day if you're not having a good one. So be prepared to be sad. Next up is a nonfiction book. I actually read this for an ARC, and this is Filmlandia, which is talking about all of the films that have been made and television shows that have been made in the Pacific Northwest region, and talking about the history of the region through film, and it was outstanding. There's some really cool pieces of artwork in this, and it is just like a great exploration of the filmmaking sphere in the Pacific Northwest. And there was a lot of really cool sounding movies that I added to my list for this. It was really well written and entertaining from like just a reading aspect. Sometimes when you read nonfiction books like this, it can kind of get a little bit dry if you're not being entertained by a compelling writer. And this was written extremely well. So this is by David Schmander. So I would definitely recommend this. It just came out at the end of April. So yeah, I'm really happy that I got a chance to read this, as it was a fantastic arc. Next up is an amazing novel called Head Like a Hole. This book is weird. It's so weird. I think like the first like 75% of this book is like some of my favorite writing and character work and just like setting that I've read in a very long time. I really, really liked Head Like a Hole. The only thing that for me, like, there is, like, for a while, it's very weird. You don't really know what's happening. Everything is kind of unexplained. And I really kind of like living in that world of just not knowing many answers. So I read this one because it was part of Amy Noel Reid's Dark Hearts book club. And I just kind of am in love with book clubs now. I forgot to mention Hellhound was for Kelly Hooked on Books from Hell Book Club. More like from Hellhound Book Club. And I really like that. So yeah, I just had great times with... What are you doing? Can you get off? What are you... You're not a gargoyle. Get out of here. What are you doing? Get. Anyways, so yeah, I've really found that I quite enjoy and love book clubs. I'm really having a good time with it. And I would not have read this had this not been part of a book club. So I had a whole bunch of friends who were talking about it and were excited about this book. So I was like, oh, you know what? I should read this and participate in this discussion. So I'll link down the live discussion. Amy and Kelly had for about this book, because I thought it was like a really good discussion and a really great live stream. So if you want to know more about my opinions of the book and just more discussions about the book in general, Lewis, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get down. Get down. Get down there. Oh, ow. Oh, now your butt. Get your butt out of me. Oh. Ow. As I was, oh God, the cat just like kicked me in the chest. Oh, it's what else, man. He's trying to kill me. He's trying to kill me. You a little hellhound. Yeah, I just really like this. I thought it really used the era of the 90s well to tell its story. This plot it's a wild plot. I think you should probably go in knowing a little as possible about this book. So I think you should read this book and then go watch that live stream discussion. I loved it. The only things that I didn't completely love is that it kind of like plays around a little bit too much in terms of explaining things. And then when you try to extrapolate that, you're kind of like, well, I don't know if this all makes sense. And I was more happy to just not have anything explained and just live in a world of endless imagination. Next up, oh my God, this book was so good. This is, we're getting into 5-star territory right now. This is Stephen Graham Jones's Don't Fear the Reaper. Oh my goodness, this is the second in the Indian Lake trilogy. I love this book. I loved My Heart is a Chainsaw, but I think it's hard because I think both of them are masterpieces in my opinion, but I think I like Don't Fear the Reaper a little bit more. I think I just like this one a little bit more because a lot of it is focused on the aftermath of what happened. And, you know, I've had like a rough 3 years. So I'm interested in reading like characters who I enjoy and care about, how they are living their lives after a very traumatic, life-changing event happened to them. So I think that's one of the things that for slasher sequels lately is just probably why I think they're even better than their originals. And yeah, this is just an amazing book. I think Jade Daniels is an awesome character. I think that the writing in this is really great. I think that the references are a little bit more kind of interwoven a little bit more naturally in the sequel than they were in the original. And I think what makes it more than just a Ready Player One-esque thing where it's just like, wow, look at these amazing things. Wow. Remember the 80s and the 90s? They were so good. It's like, ugh, I hate that. I hate when people just use an era or just be like, here's movie references. Don't you think it's funny when I make the movie references? And I'm like, no, bitch, I don't. But what I think that elevates Don't Fear the Reaper from just becoming another one of those types of things is that characters don't always agree on topics and ideas in the genre. And like, instead of it being like a I'm right, you're wrong, it's more of a, hey, let's have a discussion about a thing we both love. And like alternative views on slashers are like offered, and like characters will have a discussion about it in a way that feels a little bit more natural and flows really, really well. So yeah, I loved this book. I loved it. It was very good. Although, great action, great villain in this book. I really like the audiobook is probably the best audiobook I've ever listened to. The production values on the audiobook are outstanding. And there are a whole bunch of different narrators for different characters, and it's just outstanding. It's one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. Next up is a book that's way outside of my comfort zone, and this is the Subtweet. I'll put the cover up there. Now, this is one of those books that I read because I wanted to participate in Trans Girl April. And I loved this book. I thought this was a romance going in. It's not even really a romance. It's more of, I hesitate to say the word literary fiction, just because saying it sounds like a dirty word, like literary fiction. And like, well, I don't know, like it's like showing me like a cross, like, like I'm a vampire, like, you know, you say the words literary fiction, I'm at the room. It takes me, I won't go into it because I think this is a really good book. And it's a lot about friendship and how online spaces can be kind of corrupting to friendships if it's like, you're subtweeting people, or like you're not talking things through, or you're just living life through the lens of like the phone, and you're not talking to these people as people. Like if you're just looking at someone's Instagram and you're like assuming all these things about their lives. And there's a lot also about what it means to be a person of color making art, and then having that art be consumed by a bunch of white people, and what that means for the art itself and the artist's relationship with their own culture, and a lot of stuff that I am definitely not the person to talk to about that. So instead of just going on and on about it, I will just say I thought it was amazing. I thought the characters were really fascinating. The writing was fantastic. I will be reading much more of this author's work in the future. She is an outstanding author at capturing friendships. And also, this was a very Canadian book. It was all set in, like, a bunch of this was set in Toronto. So it was like, and it was all like real Toronto places. So like, I made a list of places next time I'm in Toronto to visit after reading this book, which was kind of really fun. But yeah, this is a great character piece about friendships. And I think it's a really good and important book to read if you so choose. And it's very quick. It's not very long. And last, but certainly not least, my favorite read of the month, and probably my favorite book of the year. I really don't know if anything will cap this one. That is Drawing Blood by Poppy Z. Bright. This book is amazing. The characters in this book are so fucking good. I was like so invested in these characters' relationship. It's like the central relationship, and I was like, oh my god, I just want them to be happy. And I'm like, oh my god. And this is interesting because like this is a horror novel, but like the horror is kind of like secondary. Like there is horrific scenes and horrific things that happen, but a lot of this I feel like is about the breakdown of the nuclear family and how that affects the children growing up post that breakdown. And it has so many interesting characters, so much interesting things to say. Poppy Z. Bright, I need to read a lot more of his books because he kills it. It was fantastic. And I was just so invested in these characters. I was so moved. This is a book written in 1994, and it's so progressive with its ideas and its areas. It really paints a picture of like southern states that like is a lot more, to me it felt a little bit more realistic than what a lot of other people do, where it's like it addresses the hardships, but also like the love and like the fact that there are progressive elements in these states that people in more conventional progressive states kind of write off their existence. And there's just like a lot of really good stuff in here. I definitely cried. I cried in this book. It was so sad at points, but then it had me so melancholy, and I was like, oh my god, life is sad and pain. And then it ends, and I'm like, oh my god, love exists and love is real. I can achieve my dreams, which is not a thing that I was expecting from a horror novel. Anyways, so that's everything I read and watched for April. What did you guys watch and read for April? I already miss Old School April. I wish it was happening all year round. But guess what? The friends we made can last forever. Have a good day. Goodbye.